Welcome, everybody. This is the Changemaker Forum brought to you by the Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute. My name is Rich Fernandez. I am the CEO of the Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute. And I'm really pleased today to host my colleague and my friend, Ralf Haacke, who I'll introduce shortly. The topic we're going to be covering today is how mindfulness and emotional intelligence can enable individual and organizational change. And as I mentioned, we offer this forum pretty much monthly, in which we really seek to engage with the people, the champions in organizations and communities around the world who are pioneering the work of bringing mindfulness and compassion and emotional intelligence skills into their organizations or communities. And as I mentioned, I'm so happy that Ralf can join us today because he is one such pioneering champion for these skills. So let me tell you a little bit about Ralf, and then we can get right into this conversation about the impact of mindfulness and emotional intelligence skills to enable change. So Ralf is currently a director at Procter Gamble's Global Business Services. In speaking to Ralf, I hadn't realized, but I was really wonderfully surprised to learn that Ralf has been at Procter & Gamble for almost 30 years and has played many roles within that time, regional roles, project management roles, business service roles, all the way through to his current position as a director of Global Business Services. I think interestingly for our conversation today, Ralf was also the founder and currently leads Procter & Gamble's Improve Your Life initiative, which I think is one of the ways that Procter & Gamble is working to build community within the organization and really bring these skills of mindfulness and emotional intelligence to scale in a meaningful way, really through this vehicle of building community. But rather than hear from me, I'm, again, so happy to welcome you, Ralf. So welcome to our Changemaker Forum, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you, and thanks for having me, Rich. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful collaboration, Ralf. I think we got the conversation and together with our other partner, SAP, who has been instrumental in bringing these skills into the business sector as well, a few years ago. So perhaps we can begin by sharing with the audience a little bit about the Improve Your Life program, perhaps why this got started at Procter & Gamble, and what some of its goals are. And actually, before we dive into that, I just wanted to tell everyone online that Ralf and I will be just having a kind of informal conversation this way for the first half of our time together. And then for the second half, we're going to open it up for everyone's questions. So there'll be plenty of time for like a multi-way conversation here. So with that, Ralf, tell us about Improve Your Life.
Yeah, happy to do so. Thanks, Rich. So Improve Your Life, the idea of Improve Your Life started in 2015, actually, when I hit a deep personal crisis. And I found mindfulness to be the powerful tool that helped me to get out of there. Although I was kind of skeptical, and at that point in time, I didn't really believe in mindfulness. I consider that to be some kind of a fluffy, maybe esoteric thing. So not really applicable for me as a computer scientist, but whoa, I was wrong. So I learned the powers of mindfulness while climbing out of that hole that I was in at that point in time. And it worked brilliantly. So I learned the hard way, if you will, that mindfulness really works. And it works even though I did not believe in it. So that got me curious. Why was that? Why did it work? And I ended up finding the answer to that in neuroscience. And I was surprised to find it there, right? So neuroplasticity, our brain is malleable, and whatever we're thinking of, what we're paying attention to, and what we're doing is changing the function and the structure of our brain. So that was very insightful. And when I got back to P&G, I wanted to bring this into P&G, but I was a bit skeptical if it can work in an organization as well. So I was looking into certain concepts that might be promising, but they didn't really appeal until I found Search Inside Yourself. And the difference there that I found was that Search Inside Yourself is a mindfulness-based emotional intelligence program. And this is really when it clicked, because it connected mindfulness, which was very helpful for me as an individual, to emotional intelligence, which can be both very helpful from an individual, but also from an organizational point of view. So I looked then into the program. I understood in general how it worked, and I started to link the benefits of the program to P&G's goals, to our aspirations we're having. And that was, first of all, easy, because the benefits of the program linked almost naturally to our goals within P&G. So leadership skills, our high performance culture within P&G, but also the well-being aspect, the happiness aspect, if you will, which is an important factor from our own internal values that we're having in P&G. And that was also important from a different perspective, because this linkage provided the reasoning for a sponsor that I ultimately found to invest in this program within P&G. So without this linkage, it might not have worked. And I was happy to be able to find that. And then there was another aspect, which was the name. Search Inside Yourself, obviously, as we talked earlier, Rich, works brilliantly within Google, right? If I'm in Google, of course, I would want to be in a kind of search-related program, but it does not resonate that well within P&G. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to also express the linkage to our internal goals in the name. And our mission statement, if you will, within P&G is that we want to touch and improve the lives of our consumers a little bit on a day-by-day basis. So the association was obvious, right? I called it Improve Your Life. You're in uppercase letters because it's not about our consumers, it's about us as P&G employees, right? So this is how this name was born. And when I then started to work together with SIYLI, with the initial contacts in SIYLI, I was happy to see that the program was like I envisioned it to be, but I was even more happier about the attitude and the mindset I found in the employees of SIYLI at that point in time. They were different compared to, I would say, other business relationships that I had, and I had plenty of them in roles where I had global partnership relationship responsibility. And I was really intrigued by that. And there was a genuine interest to understand what it is we were looking for, and also an interest to even go out of your way to be of service. And I found that intriguing. And SIYLI then connected us to SAP as the company that very successfully implemented already the Search Inside Yourself program. So we started this partnership with SIYLI, with SAP, and ultimately we decided to go for a first pilot. So starting small, starting with 2 trainings in Germany, actually, because the sponsor that I found was our back then HR director, now the European HR vice president in Procter Gamble. And the results of that first pilot were amazing. So what we did is we surveyed participants to understand what the improvements were based on the training in 4 key performance indicators. So in 4 areas, of course, the 3 benefits that the program is spelling out, which are leadership, performance, and well-being, as I mentioned before, but also creativity and innovation, which is a key area, of course, in a company, a consumer goods company like P&G. And all of those measures were just fantastic. So we considered the pilot to be successful, and another vice president in my organization, working in Cincinnati, actually, heard about that and was willing to sponsor a pilot in Cincinnati. So I'm forever grateful to these 2 sponsors, because based on their understanding of the importance of this idea of bringing mindfulness and emotional intelligence to P&G, were we able to go ahead and install these 2 pilots. And the pilot in Cincinnati, in our headquarters, was also very successful. And then folks started to say, well, you might have gotten lucky. You had a European training and a North America training, so the cultures were very similar. So maybe it was just a cultural thing. And I suggested to have another training in a very different culture. So I was able to have another pilot in Costa Rica. And that pilot also worked phenomenally, and the results were very much comparable. So the understanding grew within P&G that, hey, we might be up to something here, something that can really help us. And at that point in time, we decided to scale it more broadly. So we looked into how we can do this. We established the first Train the Trainer program together with SIYLI and SAP to help us get internal teachers certified. We started to partner, a great partnership together with our learning and development organization that helped us tremendously to execute and schedule and organize these trainings across the globe then. And yeah, we were off, and we scheduled 64 trainings then globally for the first fiscal year. Our fiscal year starts in July, right? So from July 2019 to June 2020, we had 64 trainings scheduled, and we went off, and it was a huge success. So for every training that we provided, afterwards we had interest or candidates interested in joining another training then for 2 more trainings. So it was an amazing demand, to the degree that at the beginning of 2020, we set up another Train the Trainer program because our capacity was just not high enough in Latin America this time. And then in March 2020, Corona happened. And that was a significant challenge because at that point in time, all classroom trainings, of course, were canceled. At that point in time, we had trained about 1,200 employees within P&G in 14 locations in pretty much globally. And we were just about kicking up big time when we needed to stop. That was difficult, and what we did then is we started to look into virtual offerings, of course, like everyone else, right? So we started to understand that this is not something that will go away in 2 months, which was an assumption back then, believe it or not, but that turned out to be wrong. So we invested in creating virtual formats of what we called vitamins. So we switched certain activities that we did to virtual gatherings. We provided what we are calling a mindful moments session. The term mindful moments is stolen in an approved way from a fellow champion of a Search Inside Yourself implementation in a big financial institute. And we created something that we called Brief Guide to Mindfulness at P&G. So a quick introduction for folks that might have heard about mindfulness, but who have not been exposed to that yet, that helped them to understand what it is, what the benefits are, and how they can approach mindfulness in these days now that everything is virtual. And in parallel, we worked very intensively in a great partnership with SIYLI and with SAP to create a virtual format of the training, which ultimately we were able to do. We went through a huge effort to qualify our, by then 24 internally certified teachers to become virtual presenters, being able to provide this on a very high quality. And as of November, then we started to provide the program virtually. Of course, at the beginning, a bit skeptical, will that work in a virtual format or not? But as it turns out, it works. It works well. The experience in itself is slightly different, of course, but still participants are able to experience what it means to be mindful, what it means to practice emotional intelligence, which is what we're after, right? Because Improve Your Life is not a training. It starts with a training, yes, but it's a program, it's an experience. It's the start of a journey, if you will. And that works in a virtual format as well. So we were very happy to see that. And since then, we are now starting to ramp up our virtual offerings as well. So we have about 16 trainings scheduled so far. I hope more will come. And yeah, we're on our way again now.
Love it. Thank you so much, Ralf. That's such a wonderful overview. And you said a lot of important things that I just wanted to perhaps highlight and specifically call out certain things, especially for the audience, if you're not so familiar with the kind of full progression or arc that Ralf describes. So if you're not familiar with the Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute, we started Google, and that's why we have the name Search, like search, but inside yourself. It started off as a curriculum for leaders and managers to really develop the skills of mindfulness and emotional intelligence. And it became so popular there that we got a lot of requests from other organizations to offer it. And we were able to create a separate nonprofit entity, an educational institute called Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute, lovingly called SIYLI, SIYLI for short. We like to keep it light. So SIYLI was born about 10 plus years ago. And since then, we have been working with SAP, with Procter Gamble, with many other companies to bring these skills in. And I think importantly, Ralf, you pointed out that you don't call this search inside yourself within Procter & Gamble. It's much more aligned with what you call the principles and values and policies of P&G and calling it improve your life, right? Because P&G being a company that, as you said, seeks to improve people's lives in small but meaningful ways every day. This was really, there's a process here is what I'm trying to highlight about aligning an offering around mindfulness, compassion, emotional intelligence to the company's values and its priorities. And you've done such a wonderful job, not only in naming it, of course, and describing it, but also, I think really importantly, in the outcomes and aligning the outcomes of these offerings with what you call the KPIs, the key performance indicators of the company, right?
Indeed.
So can you just tell us a little bit, because oftentimes programs like this, and this is something we do ourselves and see all the time, we can give you a general sense of did you enjoy the program? Did you learn something? Did it have a general impact on your well-being? Yes. But targeting it to the specific priorities of the company seems something really important, and that's something you've done. Tell us a little bit about that and how you kind of really fine-tuned that.
Yeah, happy to do that, because I agree 100%. If you do not align the goals of your program with the goals of your company, then why are you doing that? Why should there be an incentive, in this case for P&G, to invest in this program, right? But it's not only important to link those goals, but it's also important to measure them and to be able to prove that what you're aspiring and what you're promising actually happens. And what we did is we looked into those four key performance indicators I mentioned earlier in a way that we asked a set of questions to participants right before the training itself. So right before they were exposed to anything related to Improve Your Life. So that got us to a kind of baseline, a 0% line. And the survey in itself was fully anonymous, so no way for us to understand who put in which data point, but we got a good idea of on average where this class is. And we then asked the very same questions a month after the training, so after the end of the 28 days challenge. And that gave us an indication to which degree individuals felt an improvement in the areas of creativity and innovation, in productivity, in their leadership competencies and capabilities, and for well-being, of course. But we didn't stop there, because you might expect that if you provide a training in an organization, then at least the training is effective. Otherwise, you wouldn't provide the training in the first place, right? So that was not what we really were after. What we were really after is what we did 3 months after that, because we measured again. We asked again the same questions. We again tried to understand where are these folks. And what we found out on average is that there is an additional improvement after the 1 month training compared to the 3 months training. So in other words, without any further intervention from our side, from a central Improve Your Life team perspective, folks that were just continuing with the practices we're teaching in the training, they felt an improvement in all of those 4 KPIs. And that in itself is fantastic, because it makes the point, it proves the point that we wanted to make in the first place, which is that if you continue to practice the tools we're teaching, you see a continuous improvement in all of those areas. So that was very, very helpful to get the buy-in from our executive levels to invest in this program.
Wonderful. And the other thing that I know from knowing you and knowing your work, of course, in P&G, is that you also took a unique approach to building the impact and the kind of sustainability of these skills by really emphasizing community. And so for the audience, I think I can share this, Ralf. Like Ralf has been, one of the reasons I like to say Ralf is a champion is because Ralf and team have been very insistent that we work with small groups of teams or little community pods on a consistent basis to have these offerings. And I think community, the context of community, in other words, like a group of 20 people, like perhaps no more than 20 people at a time is how you've really thought about this. Where you can build these meaningful connections, practice these skills in a safe way with each other, and create a kind of ongoing support or sustainment system for these skills has been central, I think, to the success, from my perspective, at least at P&G, of these offerings. So can you just tell us a little bit about your thinking there, Ralf, and like how you really sought to build community intentionally around these skills?
Yeah, happy to do so. Because when we started with the idea of improve your life, we started with the end in mind. And the end in mind was really to ultimately be able to change P&G's culture and make it a bit more mindful and a bit more emotionally intelligent. So that means that we needed to find a way to make the changes we are implementing sustainable. And in order to do that, there are certain steps that we put in place along the way. So the first one was that we were very intentional in setting up the sizes for the class and make them rather small compared to other offerings that I've seen in the Search Inside Yourself context. So in our classroom trainings, we have a cap of 30. In our virtual trainings, we even reduced it down to 20 because we want to ensure that the experience from a participant perspective is as high as possible. So we wanted them to really take something out of this training that is motivational enough so that they continue. And it seems that we have been successful with that approach. Now, as I mentioned before, Improve Your Life and Search Inside Yourself is not just a training. It starts with the training, but afterwards is when the interesting piece starts, when it comes to these sustainable changes. So after the training, the 28 days challenge starts, where for those folks who might not be familiar with the program, for 28 days, the participants of the program are getting a daily impulse on what it is they can practice on that particular day out of the many tools that we were teaching in the training. So they have their time on their own, in their own pace, to experience all of these tools again for themselves and decide for themselves which of these practices would I want to carry forward. Well, we did something on top of that. We created something that we call group practice sessions. Now, group practice sessions are giving an opportunity for participants to gather in a group and then practice in a group any particular tool on that particular day. So the group practice session is a rather short session, 15, maybe 20 minutes at max. It's completely voluntary. There is no need to attend every group practice session. You come whenever it fits into your schedule, and if you don't come, that's okay as well. So no obligation whatsoever, no commitment. But what happened is that with these groups that were gathering, we were starting to form the core of what ultimately was supposed to become, we call it a local community. So these group practice sessions were hosted by the Improve Your Life teachers. And the participants ultimately then liked what we were doing so much that after the 28 days, in most instances, they decided they wanted to carry on. So they just didn't want to stop, which is wonderful, which is what we would love to see, but we cannot support it from our small Improve Your Life teacher network. And there is just not the capacity to support all these local communities and run them by ourselves. So we started off by activating Improve Your Life for every site with the end in mind. So we started to work towards identifying what we are calling a local community manager right from the start. A person that is passionate about mindfulness and emotional intelligence, who participated in the training, who is willing to spend a bit of time to organize activities then for these groups going forward. And these activities could be group practice sessions, so mental training sessions, meditation sessions, or they could be mindful walking or going out for a mindful lunch together. That wasn't really the important thing. What was important for us was that the practice groups could continue And what we saw is that local communities were starting to form. They started small, but they grew over time because others recognized that, whoa, these folks that we're seeing there in this community, they somehow act differently. They are calmer than others. They are able to manage stressful situations better than others. They are showing up as leaders in a better way. And people were starting to get curious about these communities and were starting to join these communities, even though they did not attend an Improve Your Life training yet, which was wonderful, right? So this is exactly what we wanted to see. And yeah, and this was only possible based on the support of this wonderful teacher network that we established. Really, truly passionate individuals, passionate about mindfulness, passionate about their own practice, passionate about bringing mindfulness and emotional intelligence, the gift of it, to others within P&G. So all of us together, we kind of co-created this set of local communities across various sites, and we're meanwhile connecting the various local community managers in a way that we can form a global community manager community, if you will, so that we have our own external support group for these guys so that they understand what can be done. They get some impulses from us, but more importantly, they can support each other with ideas and what is working on your end, what does not work here, and how should we go after that. Specifically, as an example, when we were starting in our with our trainings prior to COVID, when we were still able to meet in person, which again is a different experience than doing it virtually, we were gathering in rooms, and we understood that these rooms should be special in order to make the experience special. So we started to design and create something that we call Improve Your Life rooms, dedicated rooms where P&G employees have the opportunity to practice mindfulness and emotional intelligence in these rooms at any point in time on their day. And these group practice sessions also take place in these Improve Your Life rooms. So that was brilliant when we started. And yeah, unfortunately, nowadays we can't use these rooms. We're now using WebEx or team rooms, but we're optimistic that eventually we will be able to get back there. But that's the idea of building these communities, which I believe is an essential component. It's the backbone of being able to achieve sustainable benefits. And with that, ultimately, like I said before, changing the culture and make it a bit more mindful and a bit more emotionally intelligent.
So beautiful, Ralf. Thank you for sharing all of that. We have someone wants to work for you. They said, is Ralf hiring? But actually, serious question is the comment, but I think there is something in this that makes an organization like P&G a much better place to be, a much better place to work, and is, again, consistent with the aspirations and values of the company itself. For those of you who don't know, P&G has been around for over 180 years as a consumer goods company. And it's just marvelous to see that you're also, throughout that time and today, especially on this kind of pioneering edge of really trying to shape a culture where people feel this sense of belonging and community, and being able to, in their own work, improve their lives, as you say. And a lot of we've talked about this, right? The curriculum or the experience, as you say, it's not just a program; it's a broader experience of search inside yourself or improve your life, is a backbone of this, as are the teachers and the community members. So I just wanted to say a word about that and share with everyone on the call that one of the things that in our partnership with Ralf and P&G, we've been very, I think, deliberate about building a wonderful group of internal teachers through a train-the-trainer experience that's very rigorous and that's in depth. And so for everyone on the call, I just wanted you to know that we actually have one that's open through April, where we are taking people who are within organizations who can acquire these skills and then bring them into their organization, much the way that your train-the-trainers did. At P&G, they came as a cohort, and we trained specifically the P&G employees. But this thing we call organizational teacher training is for people from different companies who may want to come together, acquire these skills, and bring it back to their company. So I'm going to ask the team here at SIYLI, Regina, perhaps, to just in the chat bar to share with you the link to the upcoming organizational teacher training. In case you're interested in building this for yourself within your organization, you'll have a link here to how to engage in that kind of training. So that will be there in a sec. But Ralf, to that end, I perhaps before we open it up to Q&A, and you see the link here to the organizational teacher training, maybe just last words of advice here. We were talking on the pre-call about the fact that these are still pretty early days in how mindfulness and emotional intelligence are taking root in organizations. People still consider them soft skills, nice, but perhaps not necessary, all of which I think is a myth. And I think we have the data to prove that, which, you certainly have demonstrated P&G. And on our website, you can also find a lot of outcome data for the impact of these programs. But Ralf, perhaps the last question before we open it up to the audience fully is, given that it's early days and actually not a lot of companies are doing this yet, what advice would you give to people inside of large organizations, global companies, or any organization really, who are interested in launching and getting started offering these kinds of programs and bringing them to scale? What advice would you offer?
The immediate thing that comes to mind is that I would want to encourage everyone who has the passion to get this started and get started. Start small. Make sure, what I said before, that you link the benefits of the program to your organizational goals. That's really critical. And then get started. Start by talking to SIYLI, talking to SAP to see if there are some external teachers you might want to bring in for the initial pilot. And measure right from the beginning. Don't waste any training with not measuring. Start with the first training and measure the results. Make sure that it's clear to your executives that it's not a soft skill. It's literally contributing to the goals of your organization as you laid out when you were linking the benefits to the goals. And some watch outs maybe based from my own experience. The way we approached the training was first and foremost to clarify what mindfulness is really all about, because there are some misconceptions about mindfulness around that you might find in your potential sponsors as well, and they need to be addressed right from the start. So for example, mindfulness does not equal health and well-being. So this is one of those things, right, where immediately when you're starting to talk about mindfulness, probably due to the hype and the misconception that is created sometimes in articles that are linking mindfulness exclusively to health and well-being, it needs to be understood that health and well-being is one component, just one component of what Improve Your Life or Search Inside Yourself can provide. For P&G, for example, we decided to focus on the leadership aspects of things. And I think that is very helpful because ultimately being able to self-lead yourself through challenging times, and with that learn within yourself how you can lead others through these challenging times, is the key ingredient to manage change in an organization. And the understanding that mindfulness is creating the awareness where you start from, where you build on, then your emotional intelligence. And then you go through these steps where you learn to manage yourself better, you regulate your emotions better, you stay calmer in difficult conversations, for example, as I mentioned before, where you understand where you draw your motivation from, where you understand what makes you tick, what drives your motivation high up and improves your engagement in the job. The way how you link and connect to other individuals, but also link organizations based on empathy, based on building psychological safety for your teams to ultimately enable your teams to get to a top-notch performance. All of that is what Search Inside Yourself and Improve Your Life is all about. So this is embedded in what we consider to be leadership. So the way we position it is as a personal leadership development offering. And this took some time before it was understood, but I think now it is understood. And the intention, how to move forward for us, is that we wanted to leverage this as our foundation, as our entry point, if you will, for our future talents to be developed. So the intention is to start with Search Inside Yourself, with Improve Your Life, learn what I just spoke about, and then go into a deeper dive into various of these sections that I mentioned earlier to learn this. So my suggestion would be that you start with the end in mind. What is it that you want to get to for your organization? And then very consequently position the program appropriately, communicate and promote the program appropriately, and make sure that your sponsors are fully aligned with this direction you wanted to go in. And then just get started. It's trust the process. It's amazing to see what happens when the first participants get out of the training and provide you feedback on how they liked it. It's it's worthwhile to go after it.
Well, that maybe there is one other question, which is for you personally, like what would you say is the most rewarding aspect of leading this work?
Honestly, the feedback of participants after they get out of the training and then enter their own journey. The one feedback that we're hearing most often is that it's life-changing, and it really is, like I elaborated on before, right? And to see that this program can literally help individuals to manage these stressful times that we're in. And this is not only related to Corona, right? Within P&G, we have this high performance culture where the expectation is to be better every day and to grow every day. And to meet that kind of expectation takes a bit of a toll on you. Now, Improve Your Life helps you to understand how you can better manage these changes, how you can better manage the challenges that come with these changes. And if participants are feeding that back to you, that the program was able to help them to literally improve their lives, this is what I find most rewarding.
Doesn't get better than that. So, all right, friends, listen, Ralf and I have been in conversation two-way, and we'd love to open it up to make a sort of a multi-way conversation now with you as well. So we're about halfway through, a little over halfway through our time together. And I would just invite you, if you have been listening and you have some questions, please just send them across the chat or raise your hand, and we'll do our best to address them. As I mentioned, we've tried to do our best to kind of encapsulate this idea of bringing mindfulness and emotional intelligence for individual and organizational change. You've kind of heard the beautiful journey and kind of creation that Ralf and team have made at P&G. So what are your remaining questions along this topic or anything related to it? Please just feel free, to send those over. And while we're waiting to hear some of that, yes, that's exactly where I was going to go. Thank you for this question that just came in from Tessa. Why do you think, because I was going to ask about challenges, but this is really beautifully framed. Why do you think there is still cynicism about mindfulness?
Well, as I tried to indicate it a bit earlier, I find the current hype that was created around mindfulness a bit irritating because there are so many things and so many aspects that are thrown in the direction of mindfulness and are put under the overall heading of mindfulness that I was really raising my eyebrows. That was not the case when I started in 2016. But what I'm seeing now, right, you can buy mayonnaise that is called mindfulness mayonnaise. So this is taking it a bit too far, if you ask me. You find mindfulness hotels, you find mindfulness restaurants and all of that. So coming from that perspective, I can understand why some executives are very skeptical and would like to understand, hey, is this just a hype? Is this just to be en vogue? Are we trying to go after that? Or is something that is more sustainable? Is that something that have a lasting impact? And that's, I think, is important to address. And also on the other side, there is this linkage of mindfulness to some spiritual approaches. And although there are some roots that we can clearly find there, the Search Inside Yourself program, as well as the Improve Your Life program, is completely secular. So it's important to mention that, because ensuring that the program stays secular is important to keep doors open, especially within corporations, where obviously we wouldn't want to go down a spiritual avenue, but we would want to understand that whatever we're teaching is rooted in neuroscience, and we want to be able to show the studies. We want to be able to convince folks on an intellectual level that, yes, what we're teaching makes sense because this is what neuroscience is suggesting. So these are some of those misconceptions, and probably were driving some of the cynics towards mindfulness as we might see it today.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. We've got a lot of questions coming in. One is around actually a P&G employee says, are we thinking about offering this, to other places, schools, other beyond sort of the corporate sector? And the answer is yes, to the extent we can, we do. For example, we have a really large project with the government of Bhutan, the nation of Bhutan, where we trained all school teachers in that country, taking a similar approach to that you have at P&G, which is train the trainer. Right. And so we trained about 150 roughly teachers who then trained all the rest of the teachers in the country. And now the federal government of Bhutan is following up, and we're training all federal employees. So the entire government and the entire school system will be trained in this curriculum in that country. So the curriculum, again, is adapted for kind of scaling for kind of a train-to-trainer approach.
Wonderful.
There are a lot of, so go ahead, Ralf.
Yeah, let me just add to that, because I think that's important. So I truly believe that what we did so far in P&G is just scratching the surface. There is so much more that can be done. I mean, we've trained about 1,300 employees so far, right? That's about a percentage of the employees we're having within P&G. So much more we can do within P&G, but also outside of P&G, because one of the critical values that we're having is that we want to give back to the communities in which we're operating. This is an essential part of what we're doing, right? So there is an opportunity to go above and beyond the pure P&G internally focused activities. And I was so happy to hear about your story of Bhutan before already. And I think it's such a beautiful avenue moving forward that I'm curious to see what the future will bring.
Yeah, well, and actually, this is also echoing a question that's coming in. How do we ensure that these programs go beyond? The question is, how do you ensure mindfulness programs go beyond supporting employees to manage workplace stress, like their own lives only, but actually activate more humans to take positive action and make contributions in the world? Do you see some linkage there, Ralf?
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, every employee within P&G is also an human like everyone else outside of P&G. So we're all contributing in our own private lives, if you will, to environments, to surroundings, to society in some shape or form. So we're already having an impact on that front. But like I said before, we could do even more. So if we would choose to go in that direction, I think there is an opportunity, a path forward for us where we can help the communities we're operating in to also enjoy and take advantage of what we're teaching with mindfulness and with emotional intelligence.
Yeah, excellent. Some other questions. You mentioned some of the kind of KPI-oriented measurement that you've done at P&G. Any plans to speak more broadly to those, to share any of that outcome data? And, I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but we do have a question like, thank you for the SIYLI impact report, which we've linked for you all here, which is a broad survey, right, of like over 6,000 participants from, over 20 countries around the world on general measures of well-being, performance, things like this. But this very, very kind of KPI-focused approach that you're taking is very compelling, I think, for people in business in particular. So any thoughts about sharing that methodology more broadly? Or
Yeah, let me share a bit about the situation we're in, right? So our key priority, of course, is to provide the program to as many employees in P&G as possible. So that's where our focus area is. And we can only do that based on the help of the teachers that offer to spend a bit of their time for the program. So what we did is we kind of split up the work that needs to be done to implement such a global program across these teachers. So in the teacher community, we have certain sub-teams that are taking care of some of the aspects, like content management, community building, local as well as global, and also success measurement and business case. So it's just this kind of small sub-team that is working on this, and there is just not a capacity right now to share that more broadly. Going forward, should we find the capacity to do this, should we find the capacity to go after that in a more sophisticated way, that might also give us an opportunity to share that more broadly, but at this point in time, not.
Yeah. These things are also like a gradual build, I find in my experience, that, you have to build that momentum, and then you have to actually do the analytics. And then the next comes the question like, well, what of this can we share? I can share with the audience that in a sister organization, which is SAP, who's also been intimately involved in helping build these efforts in partnership with you all as well at P&G. They have offered and published some of their outcome reports, and in particular on KPIs like collaboration, innovation, creativity, decreased stress, improved communication. And those are publicly available. We can see if we can find a link for that. We did a blog post on it, and it's specifically the impact of the SIY Search Inside Yourself program. That's like Improve Your Life. That's the backbone of their mindfulness approach. And it also did in that organization improve KPIs. And that was a sort of longitudinal study over 6 months. And they're busy doing a much bigger study now. And to your point, they have business analysts involved and like lots and lots of data. So they're in process as well. As I mentioned earlier, this is like really early days in the evolution of mindfulness and emotional intelligence offerings within organizations. And so in many ways, we're just getting started. And a lot of what you have been offering, I think, are best practices that have been demonstrated. And I love some of the comments are actually from employees at P&G who are saying, yes, it's true. It's been life-changing. And these things really do make a huge difference.
Yeah, and it's maybe just to add on that, if I may, Rich.
Yes, please.
So what we're seeing is how these things are come to life after each training. So just in the last 2 trainings, for example, right, we're teaching some of the practices. One of them is called A Minute to Arrive, which is one of my favorite practices there, which helps a group of people that is gathering for a meeting to arrive in the meeting with their mind and with their body in the same space at the same time. So they go all together going through this 1 minute to arrive practice. And one participant in our last training in Panama, she was kind of questioning, well, wouldn't that be kind of awkward if we would do that? Wouldn't folks start to laugh if we would implement such a thing at the beginning of a meeting? But she was brave. She was willing to give it a try. And she, right after the second virtual module, she got back into her work day and she introduced this minute to arrive in one of her next meetings. And on the next day, she talked about this. She shared her experience and she said it went brilliantly. Folks were not laughing. Folks were actually thankful to have that moment to take a breath, if you will. Running from one meeting to another, pretty much like most of us are doing these days. So it was greatly appreciated. And this is when I believe we see the power of mindfulness as they change business processes, as we bring it into business processes. And with that, having the opportunity to really leverage the benefits of that. Or another example was out of a training in Brazil, where one of the participants actually provided feedback after the training that she leveraged what they learned in a meeting that they had with external distributors. And these meetings are taking place on a regular level. And she said that this meeting was very special. It was a different atmosphere. It was an atmosphere based on trust, based on openness, based on empathy, really trying to understand what is the point of the other person before starting to go into some kind of, no, I don't want to go in this way or that way. And she considered that to be very helpful. So these are the things that I think are proving, maybe more than the individual data points, that integrating mindfulness and emotional intelligence in business processes can make a huge difference.
It seems like it's a different time as well, doesn't it? Right? Where there's sort of more openness to this, I guess, with COVID and our kind of deep alienation from each other and our lives as we know them. It seems like this is a time where people are more open to hearing that, like, oh, having empathy as a leader or having compassion as a leader, being mindful of what you say and being mindful of other people's experiences. These things like seem more important than ever. Do you notice that?
Yes, I would agree 100%. If COVID taught us one thing, then it is that we are much more connected than we might have thought before. Even though there is social distancing, there is this connection, and people are somewhat craving for this connection, and they crave for it in a different way than they did it before. So the connections nowadays tend to be deeper from my perspective. So the connections you're having, you want them to be meaningful. You want them to be high quality. And again, mindfulness is very helpful to do this, listening to understand, right? Really mindful listening to someone else, listening empathically. So trying to understand what is the other person feeling, which is, of course, a bit more difficult if we're just connected virtually. But that might also be a reason why we need these tools these days more than ever. I agree, Rich.
And are you able to make that case to, we've mentioned numerous times here that sponsorship, senior level kind of leadership who really understand that, right? Are you able to make that case effectively to them, and how do you do that?
No, that particular case, not. But it would surely be worthwhile to look into this, because I think that also from an executive leadership perspective, I mean, they're struggling in keeping the connections to their teams in the way they would want it to be, right? So they're struggling with similar issues that we're all seeing. So I think you have a point there, Rich, in seeing to which degree that can be helpful to emphasize even on an executive level.
Yeah, I think the need is burning. I mean, I can speak from my perspective here because we work with many different types of organizations. And we've recently been approached by some high growth organizations that are having trouble with change, just managing all the change. I mean, change has always been an issue in organizations, but what's interesting is they say, they came to us because they said, our leaders really want to learn how to be shock absorbers rather than shock amplifiers.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And that's not an easy task, right? So even though you understand that this is what you want to be as an executive, to be that in these times is not easy. And understanding that there is this set of tools available to you with mindfulness and emotional intelligence can do magic in not only helping you to get there, but also creating this kind of confidence and calmness within you that, yes, with these tools, we're able to get through it.
So here's a good question, another good question from Ariane, which is, what are you struggling through right now in this journey with this initiative?
Right now, I would say it's probably picking up the momentum we had while we were still in February timeline in 2020. So now we need to, again, do all the promotion, if you will, create interest, reactivating the word of mouth that worked brilliantly in the past, right? So we didn't have to do a lot of promotion in the past. Word of mouth was all we needed. Word of mouth is much more difficult in a virtual environment. Since we're not that connected, we don't meet for a coffee, we don't go together to lunch. So it's a different approach, and taking up this momentum is probably what I would call as the one thing that we're struggling with right now. On top of that, of course, everyone seems to be busier than before. I'm not sure if that's the case in other organizations as well, but at least I can see that in P&G. We all seem to have even more on our plate than we had before, meaning that the work we want to spend for programs like Improve Your Life is also different to be carved out because of the other business priorities we're having. So this adds to the challenge of picking up the momentum.
Mm-hmm. So, and then what do you foresee, as we return to the, I hate to use the word new normal, because it's probably nothing like what it was before, but as we kind of return, as the vaccine starts to take more root around the world, and perhaps the virus subsides a bit, and work starts to change again, maybe more in person. Like, what do you foresee for these types of initiatives in this kind of new, in the future? Let's put it that way, in the near future.
Yeah, so two things to that. First and foremost, I believe that the opportunity now to have a high motivation to look into something like mindfulness and emotional intelligence will work in our favor, if you will, because folks will be exposed to that, more folks will be exposed to that, and they will understand that the benefits are not related to Corona or COVID. It's just another amplifier for these benefits we're seeing. So my hope is that they would want to continue down that path even after Corona. From a pure implementation perspective, I'm really looking forward to be able to get back into personal interactions. Having back classroom trainings, for example, will be exciting. But nevertheless, we want to continue in providing virtual offerings, because now that we have them, we have the opportunity to reach employees in remote locations where we have just a few employees being located there that otherwise we would never have reached with the classroom training. So now we have this opportunity and we want to go after that. But in general, we're looking forward to the personal interaction as well.
Yes, I think we all are. Well, Ralf, I just want to thank you for of course, your good work, but one of the things you mentioned earlier about working together is the way we show up to do this work, because I know we're all practitioners here of these very skills ourselves at a deeply personal level. I'll speak for myself even. And it really begins with that in many ways. You can't give what you don't have. And you're somebody who deeply embodies this work, in my experience, somebody who really lives the very things that you're offering. So thank you for not only being a champion, but being kind of a dedicated practitioner of these things. The benefits of that are obvious, yeah, and they have a real meaningful impact at P&G and on the culture there. So I guess I would just say thank you for being you and for your practice. And then I would just also offer onward and deeper together, my friend.
Thank you. Thanks so much for your kind words, Rich. And I'm truly looking forward to continuing our partnership and bring this to many more folks around the globe.
Sounds great. Thank you, everybody, for listening today. You will be receiving a video recording of this, and please don't be a stranger. We are all a global community. That's literally in our mission at Search Inside Yourself. Our mission begins with, we are a global community, making mindfulness and emotional intelligence skills practical and accessible. So please join us, and we hope to see you soon. Ralf, thank you again, and be well.
Take care, folks, and stay healthy. Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.